To love and be loved is to feel the sun from both sides. I'll have to look up who it was that saw the quote. I'm walking through the forest. It's like a network of state parks. And that quote was on the bench. It's just after sunrise, which is such a magical time here because there's dew on everything. And when the sun shines through the leaves and over little patches of grass, they light up in a way that is just different when sun's at the midheaven. Back to this quote. To love and to be loved is to feel the sun from both sides. That's the Eros in grief. To feel the bigness, the realness of that quote, the aliveness of it. Feel the embodiment of it. It's like a note at the long end of the arc of that musical tone right at the top. The love that builds. And you feel the sun on both sides. You drop into the remembrance of what it was like to love the person you lost and the feeling of being loved back. The top of the crescendo of that note, just at the tip, is sadness, longing. As I walked past that bench that had that quote, I could feel that I was already feeling that. Like I was walking that quote as I hiked this morning, feeling a slight overwhelm, my throat, my chest. But underneath it, this love that just expands out, and it just expands out so far. It's not just in my body, it's in my field. It ripples out into the forest, this love tinged with longing, which at the top, part of the note has sorrow. I thought I'd share a quick meditation this morning from my walk about the aliveness and the vitality and the Eros inside of grief. Grief, I have found, as the layers of shock and adrenaline and trauma have slowly begun to unwind their hold on me, that grief is sweet. It's a nectar, a living pool, waters of life. And that if you wade in all the way to your neck and let yourself be cleansed and baptized by these waters, that something is added to you. I had spent some time before Tanner died thinking about the misnomer of the words spiritual growth. Because growth is like when you're building something, it gets new skills, and we think of a child growing and they're able to do more as they develop. But spiritual growth is really like a process of disrobing or for the past couple decades as I've been doing it, it's felt a lot like that to me. And then when you're really playing in the, call it metaphysical realms, you notice how paradoxical everything is. So I thought, I had grabbed onto a truth. And anytime you grab onto something when you're playing in these realms, it should be a signal or a clue that you're in illusory territory. Because almost everything in the nature of reality is paradoxical. And so now, inside these waters of grief, I'm really aware that something significant is being added to me. And the growth, expansion is there. And so while there may be a process of disrobing and taking off, there's also that. And I suppose I liken it more to the metaphor of getting naked. Sorry, I'm walking through an area where the crickets are very lively and singing. The metaphor of getting naked is like the ability to touch in just to your essence, without the additions, without the subtractions, but just the essence of who you are, beyond words, beyond language, beyond your ability, my ability to define it, to pin it down. It's liminal. Something exists that's tangible and real and has a container, and it lives beyond our ability to describe it, because to describe it or to label it would make the thing smaller. And so as I walk, I realize, in a way, that is the definition of the current of evolutionary energy I am traveling inside of. It doesn't have definable borders. It just is. It has a quality of isness to it that if I just let go and follow it without questioning what's happening, I feel the rush of, the best way to describe it is evolutionary Eros, but I feel the rush of aliveness, like the quickening, the being inside of Dharma, and really letting go of my fingers and making sure I'm holding my hands wide open so that the water, the sand of time, the water of life is able to rush through rather than needing to save some of it for some other time. As I have watched my daughter, who is 11, grieve, she's just on the cusp of that period of development where the stars haven't quite fallen from her eyes yet. So she's not fully grabbed onto the trapeze bar that is immersing her in needing to belong, conform, and be part of the consensus. She still has some of her magic. And it's been such a blessing to be with her as she grieves, because immediately she was able to connect with Tanner. She'd hear sounds and tell me how he was there. She would talk to him out loud regularly. She's not shy to talk about him and her experiences with him and tell stories about him, to find him everywhere she goes. And in fact, there's this way that she has said to me from the beginning, I feel closer to Tanner now than I did when he was alive. And they had a pretty big age difference, so it makes sense, because she's been able to relate to him purely from her level. Children, you see, are animists. Animism is the Neolithic type of mother goddess culture that the indigenous people practiced, that saw every living thing, everything. I mean, I don't even think it has to be living as we're coming into the modern age. It just was everything in existence had an essence to it, had a spirit. It was inspirited, inspired with the breath of life. And my daughter has related to Tanner's death in that way. And she has reinitiated me in the animist religion of children. And so, as I have been grieving, I don't know if a sign is the right word, maybe felt into is better, but I have felt into the essence of everything that is coming up for me, especially around my grief, feelings, mental loop, trauma, stories, not good enoughs, all of this. If I had onlys, all of that is in a way kind of personified and given an essence, so that what happens when we can notice the essence of something, we can relate to it. It gives us ability to connect to the thing instead of objectifying it. And it's been a really beautiful practice within my grief. And as I'm developing this awareness, I've been calling it Animistic Psychology, because it is dealing with this aspect of mind and thoughts, as well as the deeper essence behind all of that, which again is hard to pin down with words. I'm walking in this area of the forest that has mud trails, forest floor trails. There's this gorgeous tree. I think of her as an elderly grandmother. She's got the arthritis in her knuckles and open roots, like the veins in a hand. And when I walk by her, I stop and hug her and tell her that my son died. And she envelops me in this kind of, pulls me into the field of her, call it an ecosystem. And when I stand with her, I see the kind of metaphor of our own lives, how the other trees in this forest help to sustain her life and she theirs. How under my feet there are networks of communication and ecology and mycelium, a network of connection, of impurity, cross-pollination, symbiosis. all happening effortlessly because they aren't thinking about it. However, there is this innate intelligence around it. And it's beautiful. It really can be mapped on to our own lives and how we exist and what healthy human ecologies can look like and how we are but part of a system so much vaster than we could ever imagine when we drop into the awareness that the world is not human-centered. Up ahead, the path is crowded with others who are also doing meditative morning walks or gathering with their networks to connect. And so I am going to sign off here. But it was lovely to drop in with you. Thank you. I love you all.